Welcome back here to the Forbes India show. We're speaking to Professor Raghuram Rajan. Professor, we were talking about, before we went to the break, that you said 7 to 8% is baked into the cake as far as India's GDP growth is concerned. You've also said in the past that there are a number of low-hanging fruits which India needs to pick, and you see this adding at least couple of percentage points to India's growth over the next 10 to 15 years. What are these fruits, and what reforms do we need to do to get to them?
Well, one is, of course, infrastructure, which is not about reforms as much as about implementation. Yeah. And, well, there is a reform there, which is land acquisition, which is almost central to every infrastructure project, but is holding us back. I think we have to get the political will together to pass the land acquisition bill.
Okay. You call it low-hanging, and you've also in an interview said that India has done the difficult things, built up a knowledge economy, IT, pharmaceuticals, and it's now building of roads and bridges and things that need to be done. But is it really low-hanging, or is this where reform meets real India, and the problem could be?
Yeah, I guess one could debate whether it's as low-hanging. I mean, the fact that we haven't done it suggests it's higher-hanging than one might think. But I think it's low-hanging because it's, in some sense, a no-brainer.
Okay.
You don't need to know.
It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science.
You know the way, you know the path.
You know the way. You don't need new technology. The problems are all solved. It's political will which is missing. And what we need is a coming together of the various political groups to say, look, let's settle our differences and move ahead on this.
Okay. And what are others? And what are the reforms? Before we went to the break, you said if we implement certain reforms, we can easily get that.
Well, I think so. Infrastructure is going to one, and that's going to open out vast areas of the hinterland, which haven't joined as much in the growth. Swaminathan Iyer has been talking about how some of the backward states are actually growing very fast. Well, they could grow even faster if, in fact, they were more connected. Obviously, the coastal areas, the southern areas, the western areas, but largely the coastal areas in both have been growing much faster. We need to bring growth more to the interior provinces. The second, I think, very important thing we need to do is we need to create an economy we can actually sort of move away from agriculture into manufacturing and services. We sort of seem to sometimes have a mindset which says that our growth is going to come from improving agriculture. Improvement in agriculture is part of what needs to happen. But we need to move that 60% or so of people living in rural India into the urban economy. Some of them may already be in an industrial economy, but we need to move much more of them.
Okay.
Immense gains in productivity will come from that. Immense gains in this thing. So how do we create the jobs? Infrastructure is part of the answer. A better financial system which goes into many of these areas and fosters small and medium-sized enterprise is going to be part of the answer. Education is going to be part of the answer. We need to make these people capable of doing a factory job, which is more than the unskilled. Remember, because of the constraints we put on industry before, a lot of our industry is particularly specialized in higher skilled jobs.
Correct.
And so we need to create the human capital which can take advantage of that. So I think, reforms in education, infrastructure, and finance, these are three important areas that labor is an important issue. I'm less sure what the right answer there is. I mean, people talk about labor flexibility. I worry that until we fix the
social security system,
the system of redress for the worker,
it's not such a
just doing the
signing the bill
could create more problems than it solves. We need to create that infrastructure, but that's part of what we need to do, and that's part of financial infrastructure.
Okay. Talking about financial infrastructure, you submitted a report on the financial reforms really before the worst of the excesses of the Western financial system collapse had hit us. Would you want to change anything in that report if you were to do it again?
I would say that if I were to do the report again, I would spend a little more time on the role of monetary policy in precipitating asset bubbles.
Okay.
Of course, much bigger reforms which we can think of, which eventually will need to be done. For example, to my mind, there is really no need for such a large state presence. Some state presence is useful, sometimes valuable, but such a large state presence in the financial sector, to my mind, is potentially problematic.
Okay, that's a bit of a concern because I may be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, because there's a feeling that there's a line of thinking in the ruling party that since we survived the crisis fairly well, the best system for India is a slightly closeted system where you have a large public sector banking system. You speak to far more policymakers than I do. Is that a sense of that you're getting, that's the thinking that we survived?
I think it's the thinking in some quarters.
Okay.
And I think it's not surprising that would be the thinking. In times of crisis, people run to the government and say, oh, here's one stable entity.
Okay.
I also think that it is a mistake to examine every policy from the vantage point of the crisis and say, is that a good one or not? Because your only conclusion is going to be the most risk-averse policy, the one that is, least focused on growth, is going to be the absolute right policy. So every risk-averse action is going to be treated as an act of genius, while every risk-taking action is going to be treated as an act of sheer stupidity or even corruption.